The field is full of people, 60,000 of them. It is a Monday morning in August, and the sun is blazing down on St. Peter's Field in Manchester without a single cloud in the sky. The banners are up. The crowd is dressed in its Sunday best. What happens next will change Britain forever. It is the summer of 1819, and Manchester is a city stretched to breaking point. 4 years have passed since the end of the Napoleonic Wars, and the men who fought those wars have come home to nothing. The factories are cutting wages. The harvests have failed 2 years running. The Corn Laws, passed by a parliament of landowners to protect the price of their own grain, have made bread so expensive that working families in the city cannot reliably afford to eat. And Manchester, one of the largest and most powerful industrial cities in the world, does not have a single member of parliament, not one. The rotten boroughs of the English countryside, some with fewer than a dozen voters, send men to Westminster. Manchester sends nobody. Less than 2% of the population has the right to vote. In a city of cotton mills and foundries, of weavers and factory hands working 14-hour days, the law does not consider ordinary people worthy of a voice, so they decide to speak anyway. The meeting has been planned for weeks. The organizers, a group called the Manchester Patriotic Union, have invited the most celebrated radical orator in England to come and address the crowd. His name is Henry Hunt. He is known across the country for his speeches on parliamentary reform, on universal suffrage, on the right of ordinary men to be represented in the government that rules their lives. Hunt has told everyone who is coming to arrive peacefully, to bring no weapons, armed only, his words, with a self-approving conscience. And they do exactly that. They come in their thousands from Manchester and from the surrounding towns of Oldham, Rochdale, Middleton, and Salford. They march in organized columns, many of them having drilled on the moors the night before, not to practice violence, but to demonstrate discipline, to show that working people could conduct themselves with order and dignity. The women who come, and there are hundreds of them, have put on white dresses. The children are brought along. The banners they carry read, Reform, Universal Suffrage, Equal Representation, and one, simply, Love. By late morning, between 50,000 and 60,000 people have gathered on St. Peter's Field. They are standing in the August heat, waiting for Hunt to arrive. Just a few hundred yards away, the local magistrates are watching from the windows of a house on Mount Street, and they are afraid. The magistrates of Manchester have been nervous for weeks. They have written letters to the Home Office in London warning of a general rising. They have received private assurance in return that in an extreme case, a magistrate may act without evidence and rely on Parliament for protection. They have assembled, just out of sight of the crowd, an overwhelming force. 600 hussars of the 15th Regiment, several hundred infantrymen, an artillery unit with 2 6-pounder cannon, 400 men of the Cheshire Yeomanry Cavalry, and 400 special constables, for a peaceful public meeting. The local yeomanry waiting in the side streets are a different kind of force entirely. Unlike the professional hussars, the Manchester and Salford Yeomanry are a part-time paramilitary unit recruited from the ranks of local mill owners, shopkeepers, and merchants. Many of them know the faces in that crowd personally, and not all of those relationships are friendly. At just after 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Henry Hunt's open carriage arrives at the edge of the field to a roar from the crowd. He makes his way to the hustings, a simple wooden cart serving as a platform, and prepares to speak. He is flanked by reporters from newspapers across England, the first time a national press corps has attended a provincial political meeting of this kind. The magistrates watch from their window. They issue an arrest warrant for Henry Hunt. They send word to Captain Hugh Burley of the Manchester and Salford Yeomanry, "Take your men to the hustings. Arrest the speakers." The time is approximately 1:40 in the afternoon. The yeomanry draw their sabres and ride into the crowd. What happens next takes less than 20 minutes. The crowd links arms in front of the hustings, trying to hold the line. The horses push forward. In the press of 60,000 bodies, the cavalry cannot move freely, and some of the yeomanry begin to strike at the people around them with their swords. The banners are cut down. People fall. The panic spreads outward in a wave. Those on the edges of the crowd try to run and find there is nowhere to go. The field is surrounded. At the windows of the house on Mount Street, Magistrate William Holton watches the scene and misreads it completely. He believes the crowd is attacking the yeomanry. He turns to Lieutenant Colonel Guy Lestrange of the 15th Hussar. "Disperse the meeting," he says. Lestrange's professional cavalry, trained at Waterloo and across the campaigns of Europe, form a line and charge. Within minutes, the field that held 60,000 people is empty. Abandoned banners lie across the ground. Hats, shoes, and shawls are scattered across the trampled grass. The dead and wounded are left where they have fallen. One eyewitness, a cavalry officer watching from the edge of the field, rides in and tries to strike up the swords of the yeomanry. He shouts, "For shame, gentlemen! What are you about? The people cannot get away." He is ignored. Among those killed that afternoon, John Lees of Oldham Saybridge, Margaret Downs of Manchester, Saybridge, James Crompton of Barton upon Irwell, trampled by horses, Martha Partington of Eccles, thrown into a cellar in the crush and killed, William Fields of Kennedy Street, Manchester, 2 years old, ridden over by the cavalry. At least 15 people are dead by confirmed record. Estimates from the time put the total at 18. Nearly 700 more are seriously wounded. By 2 o'clock, it is over. The reporters who witnessed it begin to write. James Rowe, editor of the Manchester Observer, is the first to name what has happened. He calls it the Peterloo Massacre, a bitter echo of the Battle of Waterloo 4 years before, the great British victory over Napoleon, now inverted into a charge against unarmed civilians at home. The government's response is swift. The Prince Regent sends his official thanks to the magistrates and the hussars for their firm and decisive action in preserving the peace. The Home Secretary, Lord Sidmouth, conveys these congratulations formally on the 27th of August. Henry Hunt and the other speakers are arrested and charged. Journalists who reported the events are prosecuted. The Manchester Observer is forced to close within 6 months. Parliament passes the Six Acts, a package of legislation designed to suppress large public meetings, restrict the radical press, and prevent the drilling of civilians. The authorities have decided that what happened on St. Peter's Field was the right thing to do. The country disagrees. The news spreads through England like a fever. In London, in Birmingham, in Edinburgh, the reaction is one of horror. The poet Percy Bysshe Shelley, living in Italy when he hears the news, writes a poem in reply. He calls it The Mask of Anarchy. Its closing lines, "Rise like lions after slumber in unvanquishable number," will be quoted at rallies and protests for the next 2 centuries. John Edward Taylor, a Manchester businessman who was present at the field that day, helps to found a new newspaper the following year. He names it the Manchester Guardian. Its founding purpose is to provide honest reporting of events that powerful men would prefer to see buried. In the longer arc of British history, Peterloo does not produce immediate reform. The government holds the line for another 13 years until the Reform Act of 1832 begins to widen the franchise. Universal male suffrage follows in 1918. Women's suffrage in the same year. Almost every demand written on those banners in St. Peter's Field, every word the crowd had marched behind in their Sunday best on that hot August morning, is eventually granted. It just takes 100 years. The field where it happened is now St. Peter's Square, in the centre of Manchester. A memorial was finally inaugurated there in 2019, 200 years after the day. It is a plain stone monument. On it are carved the names of the dead. William Fields, 2 years old. That is what happened on Manchester's darkest day.